Hi, welcome to the next video in our Recycle app playlist. So in the previous video we looked at the user query where we were querying the users in the GraphQL namespace. I think I've got that in my code here. Yeah, so we got this list of users and we had it working fine other than we couldn't get it to work with the middleware that we were trying to prevent from happening. So what we're going to do now is we're going to try and set up the register endpoint, which means we have to set up, we need the middleware to work, but we need it to not work on the register endpoint because obviously by definition if you register and you don't have a user to authenticate with. So that's what we're going to try and do today. So let's get started on that. First thing I want to do is create the mutation type here in GraphQL. So I might not be strictly correct here, but my understanding is that uh, um, a mutation type is kind of like an update or a post or patch or put, whereas a query, such as getting the user or users here, is more like a get, or in database terms, a select. Obviously, we're not dealing with the database, so it's, I suppose more like a get. So because we're registering creates a user. So because we're creating an entity, it kind of needs to go under a mutation. So let's see if we can get this to work. So we'll call it the register mutation. Now we're going to need to pass into this a name, which will be a string, an email, which will be a string, and a password. Just start off with the basics for now. Okay, and that will return a user instance of the registered user. Okay, now what will happen now is if we try to run the register, I've just hopefully got this stored, yeah. So if I try to run this mutation here in Laravel Playground or GraphQL Playground, one of a number of things can happen depending on where I am up to. Yeah, so we've got error, and I think that is because of the authentication, even though it doesn't need the authenticate, it shouldn't have the authentication. So let me just go back into the config. Let's see where we are with that. Okay, so no, the middleware has not been activated. So let me just PHP artisan config cache. Okay, let's reload that page. Okay, cool. So this is the error we're after. Could not locate a field resolver for the mutation. So the reason why that's happened is in our query here, we haven't put any kind of directive. So for example, if we go, here we haven't put a directive. So here we've put a directive at paginate, and that basically is kind of like the back end saying, right, this is the query that's come in, so this is what I want you to do with the request, which is to paginate the data. Whereas, say on here, on the user specific, it's using the find directive because obviously we're passing in an ID to find a user. So that's fine. But here, we haven't put a directive. So it thinks now, okay, you haven't given me a directive. That means I need to go and look for a file in another folder where I can check this particular mutations logic. What do you want me to do? And that's what we're going to do, is create that file. So if we go to let's see, PHP artisan lighthouse mutation, and we'll just call it register. Okay, so what that will have done is in our app folder, so app GraphQL mutations. I know this is just the way VS Code kind of concatenates the folder nesting. So that's app GraphQL mutations register.php. So here we have our resolver. So now in here, let's make this very simple just to start with. We now have in our args array the three items that we passed in from the .graphql file, which is name, email, password. So quite simply what we could do is just say user I've just inserted it there. So user create, and then we can just say name, and we can say is args name. Let's see, let's do the same for email. And then let's do the same for password. However, obviously we don't want to store our password as a plain text field. So what we're going to do is just say hash make and whatever the password is. So hash is just a facade, so we'll just insert that. There we go. If you're on VS Code, I think the default command is Control Option I. If you're on a Mac, yeah, I think it is. So this will create the user. Cool, that's really good. But just one more thing we need to do. If you remember, in the here, this expects a user to be returned. That's what this parameter is here. So what we can do now is just say, okay, the user create method returns the user instance, so why don't we just return that? So we're now returning the user instance to the GraphQL, ultimately to the call and code in the playground. So let's see if that works. Okay, so look at that. So we have ID equals 11, and all we asked for was the ID field. That's the only reason why we're only seeing the ID. But if we go into the database, there we go. ID 11, Sharif, s dot at example.com. Yeah, good job of not doing an English class. And there we go. So there's the user created and then returned back here. This will effectively be the client, so our Vue.js app, to do whatever we want with that particular user. So let's just do this again, except this time let's put the 3 details on that we provided. So if I register again, oh, we can't put the same email. So if I do S2, let's fix that. S2 at example.com, enter, and there we go. So ID 13, Sharif, A2 at example.com. What happened to ID 12? It must have failed on the index, but still triggered the auto increment. Yeah, okay. I never knew it did that. It's not a biggie. So there we go. So there's my other user created. So the register endpoint is now created, and we are returned, or we get back the user here on the client. So the thing is, what we kind of need to do is get more than that, because if we there's 2 ways we could do this. We could register and automatically log the user in after registration, or we could register and say, right, now you need to log in with those credentials. And I'm going to go for the latter, only because it means I can change how the API token is done rather than doing it here in the register method, because the API token may need to change on a login. So if you do it in the register methods, it gets a bit messy. I've got to abstract that out because they're not always registering. So I'll leave this as it is. This is cool. What we do need to return back though is, all we need to do is on the client, we then need to say, okay, we've done the register, let's do the login. Does it save these? I think it's in the history, isn't it? Yeah, register. Okay, so we can come back to that later if we need to. So let's create the login endpoint now. So login. Now with the login, we don't need the name. Assuming we're logging in with the email as the identifier. So login is email, that, password is password. Okay, and we'll just bring back. Well, we don't need any of these. All we actually need is the API token. and we'll come back onto that in a moment. Now, obviously this is going to error because there's no login endpoint. Yeah. So there's no login on the mutation that we set up before, for which has register on here but no login. So what we can do is create login, and this one is very similar to register. In fact, I'll just copy that. But we don't need the name. But again, we're going to create a resolver here for this. So back to our command line, and we'll call this login. There's another reason why I'm using resolvers, especially after we've logged it as well, but we'll probably come onto that in another video. So we should have the login resolver now. Let's just check. Where are we? 11 minutes. Okay, let's just see if we can quickly do this. So if we go to here, same folder, we now have the login. Now, what we can do is, again, the args username, args name, no, args email, args password. So we can say user where email is args email first. We could do first or fail, and then we could wrap this in a try catch, couldn't we? I'll tell you what we'll do for now. We'll come back to that. We'll just do a first, and if it returns null, it returns null. So let's insert that user, app models user. Okay, so let's assign that to a variable, user equals, and now we can kind of say, well, let's put it in a conditional. So if user equals that, so now we can do stuff with that user. Well, we've checked that the email matches. We now need to check the password. So we now need to say, if I don't like these nested ifs, I'm telling you now, but I'm just showing you the logic. Hopefully we'll try and refactor this out another way. So if, hang on, so it's hash check. So the value is what's passed in. So that's args password. And then the hashed value is going to be user password. Okay, so if we've got to this point, the email matches and the password matches, so what we can do is return the API token. Now we're saying return the whole user. I'm not sure if we need to return the whole user, although there probably will be some metadata in there that's worth returning. So what we'll do is let's just return the user. You can always trim it down later. And then otherwise we just return false, I suppose. I don't know how that will match. Shall we return null? Probably will be better for the query. So this is now expecting a user, but it could be null. Let's give it a shout. So login. This might error because of the API token, but I'm not sure. Yeah, okay. So did I put the API token on there in the first place? Let's go to the database migrations. Yeah, so I have put an API token. So what we need to do is now populate that API token. So how I'm going to do that is let's get rid of these nested ifs. So let's put that as if not user. We're going to return null. So return. Okay. And then if that doesn't match, we'll return null. So now what we have is the user, so we can say, let's pull a random string up. So if we say user API token equals, is it the str? Let me just see what Laravel's random. See what the best way to do this is. str random. Yeah, perfect. So let's grab that. Let me just insert that. So what's going to happen is every time someone logs in, it's going to return the user, but it's also going to reset the API token. So if you log in on a different device, it will effectively log you out of the original device. Now that may or may not be the desired effect. We could set up a API token table to manage different devices, but that's not the purpose of this. For this particular one, we're just going to have it where wherever you're logged in is the API token, that's fine, that'll last, but as soon as you log in somewhere else, the original API token will become defunct because a new one will be created. So let's just, I just want to check the user table, user model, because we're not hiding the API token, but I do want to put an authentication on it, and this is where I'm not sure if this is going to work, and we might have to change it a bit slightly, but let's see. So I'm logging in now. Cannot query field API token. Let's just see if it returns the ID. Okay, so it is returning the ID of 13, which is our logged in user, and there is an API token there. Oh, I need to put it in here. Let's put it in here. So API token. Yeah, I haven't really talked about this, have I? So this is a kind of GraphQL's interpretation of the models that we're using. So this type user, it's kind of like a like-for-like mapping to the Eloquent model in Laravel. And so you can see the different fields here, ID, name, email, and you tell what each field type is, ID, string, date time, string, and so on. And obviously if you add any new fields that you want to return to be made available. So this user here is actually saying grab me this user here, which is then mapping to the Eloquent model. So this doesn't go straight to the user model, which I got mixed up a bit. So yeah, if you want to return something from the user model, you've got to make sure it's one of these items in here. So this should be fine now. So if I log in again, there we go. So I get my ID and I get my API token back to the client. Now I can now use this API token to do other things. Now at the minute, we're not using the middleware, so it doesn't really matter. But this is good. We'll stop this video here because we've got our token and we can now use this for more queries, and we can get the middleware in place now, but still use our token where we need to use it. So thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, obviously please click the like button. It really means a lot to me. If you want to see more in this series, click the subscribe link and whatever the other gizmo buttons at the bottom of the YouTube page are. I appreciate you watching. Until the next video, thanks a lot. See you again soon.